Good evening and welcome to the RSU 14 Board of Directors meeting. The date is January 8th, 2014, and the time is 6:05 p.m. May we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Kate Bricks.
Here.
Eric Colby. Don Davis. Jennifer Fleck. Diana Forsland.
Here.
Marge Gavoni.
Here.
Pete Hensler. Here. Don Perkins. Jerry Keene Dwyer.
Here.
Katrina Sangster.
Here.
Kate Nealon.
Great. And if we can just open with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have some time for public participation here, but maybe we'll do that after we come back from our executive session, being that we're going directly into an executive session. So if we could move to 5 and have a motion, please.
I move to enter into executive session to discuss contract negotiations with the Sebago East Shore Education Association pursuant to 1 MRSA 4056D and not to return, is that true?
No.
No.
And to return.
And to return to the regular meeting.
All those in favor? Okay. Yeah. Okay, it's unanimous of those in attendance. So we're going to go into executive session. We will return at approximately 6:35 to continue our regular meeting for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Good evening and welcome back to the RSU 14 Board of Directors meeting, January 8th, 2014, and the time is 6:40 p.m. And we're going to begin with public participation because we had that on the agenda prior to our executive session and the public was not here yet. So is there any public participation?
And they still aren't here.
Look at that. See, I knew it.
I'm multitasking tonight because I had to do baseball registration first.
Share your name if you don't
Yes,
mind.
Michelle Jordan from Wyndham, and I haven't had a chance to publicly say thank you to the school board and the community for the amazing support for our first phase of our playground at the primary school. And I just wanted to come and do that and say thank you to those of you on the school board who are part of that in the spring and helping us get it through, and all of you in the community who have come out for fundraising and supporting, and the businesses in the community that have made donations and helped us. We've raised over $34,000 already and are well on our way to our $50,000 goal for the end of the school year. And I just wanted to say thank you for all of that support, because we couldn't have done it without your support and the community's support. So thank you.
And thank you for your passion and leadership, Michelle, as well as I know there were other volunteers too, but you did a lot in that effort. So thank you right back at you. All right. Great. That was good public participation. I swear I didn't pay her.
We wouldn't have any. We wouldn't have any public if it wasn't for you.
I was supposed to have friends tonight. I don't know what happened.
Maybe they'll come back. They might have seen the door closed. We were a little bit delayed. So, So we are going to move on to number 6, our committee reports. We need to come out of it officially? I did. I stated it. Yeah. It's okay. So we're going to start tonight with policy committee.
Policy Committee will be meeting on Friday, and I hope we'll be discussing student use of cell phones, which the more you dig, the more you find. I'm grateful to the administration because they have given some thought to what we presented them so far and have made some comments which I think will be helpful for their administration of this policy. So we'll see after Friday. Hopefully we'll have something that we can present to you. And I think after that we'll head right into staff use of cell phones since they're kind of related. So that's where we're at.
Great. Thank you for the concise report. Finance committee?
Let's see, it's been weeks since we've met, so I'm not pulled up. I was appointed chair, so I will be giving the report. I know we talked about income and expense reports. The other committee members are Dawn and Diana and Marge and I, so just so you know who they are. We talked about income and expense reports. We began an initial discussion about budget planning as we head into that portion. I'd like to take like 2 minutes now, or a couple of minutes, because I sort of presented it, I think, at our retreat, wanting some direction, if anyone has direction for the Finance Committee regarding the budget planners, ranging from we want 0 tax increase to I can tolerate a tax increase to 0 base. And I just wanted to see if we could take a couple of minutes now and see if anyone has direction to give to the Finance Committee that we can also pass on or think about as we look at budget planning.
I just reviewed and brought the minutes from your meetings, and thank you for that. And the thing that really stuck out in my mind was, and I'm just going to read your little blurb here. Open the door expenses can be as much as $2 million. Discussed impact on strategic plan. Most of these expenses are personnel and health insurance, as well as increases in heat and electricity expenses. And this is the part that, with no change in current budget numbers, and adding open the door expenses would yield a 5.12 budget increase. And that's pretty high.
So that's the struggle. The struggle
Right.
is, oh my gosh, what direction do we give these people who have to go ahead and start planning a budget? Rich is sitting out here in the audience, so just.
If we say we want a no tax increase, it means we have to cut 5% from this budget.
Right.
Right.
No? Am I wrong with that?
No, that's not the tax impact. That's the operational budget increase
Okay.
impact. That would have a much different impact.
So the 5% increase is the 5% of our budget,
Operating budget,
not on
yeah.
taxes.
Right.
Okay.
The tax piece
But
would
it-
depend
there
a
would
lot
be-
on revenue, so we have the revenue piece, the state subsidy and all those things. So, the tax implications are totally unknown. We just know from what Kate just said that it's a 5% increase to our current operating budget.
With no additional programs or
Right, exactly.
services.
Has nothing to do, just with expense-wise side, it's nothing to do with revenue side.
I can't remember when we've had a 5% increase. I mean, that we voted on
We ever have.
an increase that was that high.
Right.
Why is it the prediction so high on the
You know,
expense side?
I think mainly because because of all the cuts, we're down to the bone, and now it is all human resources and energy, really. I mean, when we talk about open the door, by the way, it means that I'm using a silly example, but if the high school, it's hypothetical, by the way, if they budgeted $25,000 for equipment, we carried the 25 as if they're going to spend it this year, too. That doesn't mean, it's just for us to get the first model out there, do you know what I'm trying to say? So it could be that he actually needs 35, or he might need 8,000, or he may need no money. So all we do is carry everything over, with the exception of what I pointed out, which is increases to health insurance projection and an increase in staff projections, that's all.
And
Based on
generally,
numbers.
based on what?
Based on numbers of
Right.
students.
Right. I would also say that typically, I might be wrong, Don, but everyone starts with a zero based. It's sort of like you don't automatically get that 35,000, you have to go back to zero, and what do I need? So we don't automatically assume that you're taking what you had and going next, so it's always been a zero based.
For those
the
of us
person
who've
who-
been
sorry.
through these budgets, we also know that, I mean, some of those line items are pretty skimpy.
Right, exactly, right. But you still have to have something in, supplies. So it's not as though supplies go to zero, but you have to, each person goes back and says, what do I need this year for supplies? So you're right, someone may have needed 25,000 in equipment last year, but again, they might need 35 or something, or only 8. So it's so fluid, but just that open the door sort of number is scary. It's very scary.
Well, it's scary considering the economy and the way we've operated. We're to the bone. I mean, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that. I mean, just speaking to one principal today, I said, where would you cut 5%? And he said, I don't know. I don't know.
Right.
It would be people.
And that's the struggle of when you start to say the direction is, okay, we want zero base, we don't want a tax increase, those are all the struggles of. what
And
you
we
have
don't want to impact programming.
Right.
And programming involves staff.
Staff, exactly, that's right.
I guess one of the questions I have, being a new person and not knowing all the ins and outs, but you mentioned 3 things. You mentioned energy, you mentioned insurance. What's changed? You're talking about health insurance?
Yes.
What's changed with that? Has it gone up?
Well, I think the prediction is that it will. I mean, there's never been there's been 1 year, I think, that we actually were held flat, but generally speaking, the Anthem lets us know what their rate increases are based on experiences, sometime real close to when you actually have to approve the budget, so we have to make a projection of that.
Right. What are they projecting?
They haven't. We've projected 8, but I'm thinking that's frankly too low. In that early projection, I'm thinking we might need to go a little higher than that. But we're people intensive. It is about programs, so so I've carried hypothetical salary increases through as well to get to those numbers. But we've been very lean since we've become an RSU, and I'm sure before in the other 2 communities when they were departments were lean as well. So it just makes these decisions so much harder.
Well, I mean, it's hard to say just flat statement, but I do think there has to be a balance in protecting our taxpayers and fulfilling the needs, our educational needs in the district. So, do I think we can tolerate 5% more than last year? No. So there definitely is going to have to be some trimming, and you guys are. The administrative team are the experts. We're not the ones who make those decisions about where the trimming comes from, but it's going to have to be found somewhere, because that's not going to be tolerated in our communities.
I really don't think we can count on the state. I mean,
Surprise, surprise.
just having printed out the state revenue forecast from November, just a very modest increase, and even at that, it doesn't look healthy.
Right.
So I would not expect
Exactly.
any increase in money from them.
Yeah.
And locally, I don't want to talk for the whole state of Maine, but locally, the economy has not improved at all. The amount of folks who use the food pantry on general assistance, our
the
amount
numbers
of
of
free
students
and
on free and
reduced,
reduced.
the amount of homeless has increased. So to actually, and I know our main interest is for the students, but to hit the taxpayers with an increase, I think.
Well, there's
when you
going to
look
be
at
an
5%.
increase, is my guess.
But that
We're not going to be able to get away
5%.
without an increase.
Oh, yeah,
But-
but not looking at something like the 5%.
Well-
I know that's not the tax
Right.
base, I get that.
Right.
But with the lack of financial support from the state, and every time you get another piece of literature from them, they're looking at Health and Human Services and education again. And how do they calculate what they give us? And it's kind of like, and that's never a good thing. That always just means they're trying to find a way to give us less. So I guess we all agree it's really a lousy situation.
What I have a hard time with is we go through the whole thing at the end and we don't like what we hear. And so then we say, well, can we make it 0 or can we make it this %? And I'd rather do that. I'd rather at the beginning of the process, what does it look like? What does it look like at 0? I don't even want 0. I don't even see how we can do 0% increase, but say what would it look like at 2%? That kind of thing, so that maybe a couple of scenarios.
Okay. Well, we're going to have a finance meeting, I think the 22nd? Yeah. So that's a good idea. So
Or
we
around
can
there.
or around that. Well, I think that Wednesday, but we'll talk about
Yeah.
that. But that's an idea, and before that, we can kind of work on that and come up with some ideas and not only for us as the board, but also for the A team and the budget planners.
I mean, it's hard for
giving
us,
some-
and it's a lot more difficult for the public when you say, well, we want it at 2%, or we want it at 0. I couldn't even tell anybody at this point what that impact would be. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we need to be able to see, okay, this is this many people. This is this program. And are we willing to get rid of that? And if we're not, then that's off the
Give
table.
an
And then-
example of this is what it would be
Right,
to
this
do
is
that.
what it would
Okay.
look like.
All right,
and-
I think we can try to do some of that. That would be, okay. That'd be great. All right. I think, and we just talked about the fact we're going to contract negotiations, which just throws all of the rest of this up into lots of questions as well. So, but that's essentially what the Finance Committee has been working on and will be working on in the future. But thank you. Anyone else have any feedback for?
I'm just speaking once again as a new person, what I'm hearing is, I think people aren't always afraid of an increase. I think they look at the reason. When oil goes from $2 to $4, people say no brainer, you got to do that. I think it's what the reasons are. It makes a big difference on when people want to open up their pocketbooks.
Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks.
Helpful. All right, moving along. Facilities Committee, currently the chair of that, so I will give a report. This year, the Facilities Committee actually has, by the board, been charged with creating an advisory committee that comprises not just of the board members on a committee, but of administrators and members of the public, which I think the whole board is aware of, but for the sake of the public. So we have currently myself, Marge, and Kate are the board members. Sandy and Dawn, the administration, and then we also have our two middle school principals and our director of facilities and three members of the public from the town of Raymond and 3 members of the public from the town of Wyndham. I think I named and
Teachers.
yes, sorry, thank you, and 2 teachers, one from each of the middle schools. And the purpose, I'm just going to actually read the purpose of this committee. It's an advisory committee to investigate and consider additions and or renovations to the current middle schools, Jordan Small Middle School in Raymond and Wyndham Middle School in Wyndham, that would support high-performing middle-level educational programming in our 2 communities. Further, to investigate and compare any proposed changes to the existing middle schools to that of a new consolidated middle school that supports high-performing middle-level educational programming in an efficient and cost-effective manner. So we're really, this group, is focusing on the 2 middle schools, which are our oldest buildings in the fleet. And we've had thus far 3 meetings. Our initial meeting was mostly a setup meeting and getting things prepared. Our second meeting, we did site visits to the 2 locations, 2 middle schools. And our third meeting, we had Lyndon Keck from PDT Architects, who's done a lot of work in the district on buildings and is very familiar with our buildings. He came in to give us kind of an update on our buildings from his perspective, as well as some possible scenarios, suggestions of, how things might look. all of these notes notes are being taken, and they all should be available on the district website. And we encourage you to, take an interest in this work. It is, it's a busy group, a busy committee. Will be meeting again this month, and our goal is for this advisory committee to present to the board a recommendation in relation to the work in May or June of this year. And that's just a recommendation based on the work that the committee will have done, and then we'll go from there as a board.
Katrina?
Yes.
Could you, just so the public knows, because I don't even know if we've gotten it out to them that much, as to the rationale of why?
And that would probably come out in the notes as well, but both Wyndham Middle School and Jordan Small Middle School are the oldest buildings and in most need of work to them. So really this work that we're doing, and then ultimately decisions that we make, will give direction to the administration and to our facilities director about, do we spend X million dollars to renovate 2 buildings that we have, or do we take another tactic and look at new construction or some sort of modification of what we have? So does that
Yeah.
help explain?
I think
Is that
so.
what you were looking for?
Yeah, because I think the public, because there's been some negative information that's floated around out there, and I just felt it would be helpful if the public knew that this has nothing to do with, it's not an overcrowding issue. There are other drivers behind this,
Right.
of why this.
Yeah, I think there was some
committee was-
misunderstanding about this having anything to do with over the last year's facilities issues, which, were a completely different kind of bailiwick. This is really, this charge has come from the needs of those buildings and us to make prudent financial decisions about, I think of Toby always saying, do you put the lipstick on the pig? I hope you're watching, Toby. We've got to decide how we want to move forward with these buildings. Yes, it will. We are looking at the educational, we'll have to include kind of the educational makeup of how these buildings are used or future buildings are used in addition. That will be part of it, because it wouldn't be prudent to not look at the whole kahuna when you're looking at those things. So, all right.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions? Nope. All right, moving along. Anything on adult ed? Who's our
Jennifer.
Jennifer, did you want to share anything? Update?
Before you start, for the new members, when you speak, you really
Have to speak into
have
the
to
mic.
speak into this, like Kate says. What do I have to swallow it? Believe me, it's that bad.
I've been to one meeting of the Adult Ed Committee so far, and we had just put out a new catalog of courses. So they have a great selection of different types of courses coming up, both for continuing kind of basic education to get your job, and then or enrichment education as well. So a whole suite of interesting and fun enrichment courses. They are then working on their budget to come out, and it's a little tricky for them because all of their income basically that comes from those enrichment courses, which is much harder to predict enrollment than students, which is still difficult to predict. But how many adults are going to sign up for different classes is tricky for them. So that's what they're working through now.
Great.
So.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, and the vocational schools is now
Been on hiatus.
hiatus. So
Yes.
no new update.
We haven't had, there's been no meetings.
Okay,
Next meeting is next week.
great. And AmeriCorps? Any new updates?
Not since last time. The change this year, instead of having our quarterly meetings that we had last year, pardon me, we're in our second year, as I shared before, of our grant. This is a 3-year grant at the Real School. We will be having events this year where the students will be highlighting the service learning projects that they're working on, and of course you all will be invited, so I encourage you to attend those. It's very interesting to see the projects that are going on with the real school students. I shared last time that there's some great ongoing projects. They have a culinary arts program at the school where the students provide lunch 3 days a week at the school, and for the Baxter students as well, which is a really neat hands-on learning, which is the whole focus of that grant. And Craig Himes is the volunteer coordinator of that grant. So it's actually a hugely beneficial grant for us as a district, because we aren't paying for that. And we have 13 AmeriCorps members. There's full and part-time people that are assisting us in running all those programs. So it's great.
Thank you. We have under committee reports, which isn't really a committee, but board goals. And I'm just going to really give an update of our last meeting, because we didn't actually get it to completion with our board goals, but for good reason. We had, and just this is for the sake of the public, last time we met just as a board, and we had a woman representative from Maine School Management Association, and her name is escaping me. Elaine Tomaszewski, who had at one time been a superintendent and an educator, and she now is part of the Maine School Management Association, and really an informative and educational session with her about how we can be a highly effective and efficient board, and some basic, some of it was, I hope, helpful for our first-time board members, but I know it was also useful for those of us who've been on the board for a longer period of time as well. And she was great about allowing guiding our meeting, but also allowing us to ask questions and get specific answers to our board and our situations. And so I just think it's good for the public to be aware that, our district, not only for our teachers and our students are we looking for growing and learning, but also as a board that it's an important piece that we look at and educate ourselves about how we can be as effective as we can. And one of the things she handed to us, I'm actually going to read part of, because I think it was new learning for a lot of us, and I think it is a misunderstood component of what a school board is legally. So for the sake of the public who's watching, of Maine's political bodies, and this is an article by Donald Kopp entitled "Maine School Boards Are Unique. Understanding that uniqueness is important." Of Maine's political bodies, school boards may well be the most complex and least understood. And I'm going to just take bits of it. So Maine's Supreme Court has concluded that school boards may exercise only those powers conferred on them by the state education laws. Towns and town voters did not create school boards, and other than voting for school board members, budgets, and referenda, towns and town voters have no authority over school boards. That's why understanding the following principle set forth by Maine's Supreme Court is so important. The school committee acts as a public board. It in no sense represents the town. Its members are chosen by the voters of the town or towns, but after election they are public officers deriving their authority from the law and responsible to the state for the good faith and rectitude of their acts. So what that means is that a school board is not a representative body like the state legislature or the Congress. Its members are chosen by the voters, but its duty is to oversee public education in the manner prescribed by the state law. So I just think that's an important piece for the public to understand, that we really have to focus as a group of individuals together on doing what's best for our district, our students, our teachers, and complying with the state. And so that was a really interesting evening that we had with Elaine, and she did send me a lovely note, and I should have brought it tonight. I'll bring it next week because she was highly complimentary of how engaged our board was, and had really nice things to say about us as a board, and thanked us for our attentiveness. So thank you all for that, and we do need to follow up, and we'll do that not now, but at another time with our setting our own goals as a board. What are some of our priorities for this upcoming year, and 'cause it's important for us to to talk about those things, and have some background to what we're looking at this year as important to us. Okay. Anyone else have any comments about that evening? Okay. I think we are going to move on. We are number 7 is an executive session, and we actually do not have an executive session this evening. We weren't able to, with the weather and things, that we weren't able to be ready for that expulsion hearing. So we are going to move straight to Rich Drummond, if you are willing, Rich, to join us, which is great because now we have a little extra time on our hands. And actually, before we begin, we asked Rich last spring, I think, or at some point last year, if he would look into the concept of pay to participate. And what we mean by that is that, or let me go back. We spoke about the budget tonight. Money is an issue. Every year, I've never heard in my tenure here a good year for the budget. So, thank you. We have come to the conclusion, we can keep slashing budget, or we can look at new ways to create income. And this is a possible way. This is by no means a direction that we have to go in or will go in, but it is something that we felt strongly enough to look at, that we have lots of kids who are involved in outside activities outside of school, and that there is a big cost to that. But for example, we have 40% of our students, I think, are involved in sports. So 60% of our students are not involved in sports, yet we're paying, for those 40% to be involved. So the idea is that there be some form of contribution, perhaps, to a participation fees in outside activities. And when we talked about it as a concept, some of the things that came up were a lot of people, when kids are not yet eligible for sports, who are paying lots of money for their kids to do town sports or league sports. And so it's not a foreign concept to have a participation fee. So it's a concept. And I really appreciate you being here, Rich, to share with us what you've learned. I know there are some districts already have instituted this, and hopefully you're going to... Yeah. Oh, and then the other thing I wanted to say, I'm sorry, this is a very long introduction.
No, it's...
The other thing I want to say, this is a workshop. So, and I think it's really important for us to, as a board, understand the distinction. So a workshop is meant for us as a board, and, to hear, to learn. This is the first time we're being presented with this information at all. And then if we have questions, we have time allotted. Let's see, how much time were you supposed to get? An hour. Look at that.
10
now
minutes.
You get an hour and a half. So, that's the intent of a board workshop, is for us to be able to ask those questions We may have to have another workshop at another time because, we may just get some information and not even know what our questions are yet. But I just want to be clear that is, sometimes we just have updates, but this is really a workshop for us to be able to get into some nitty-gritty. And when we get to the point of questions, I think, because I don't know how many questions people are going to have, but just in the interest of everybody getting a chance to ask questions, we'll do one question at a time from anyone who has questions so that we get to rotate around a little bit. Okay?
I think that's just a good place to start, too, in regards to the questions. Hopefully, when this is completed, it'd be a nice thing if there weren't any, because that would tell me that I did a great job preparing. So, but I know that's not going to be the case.
You still did a good job preparing.
Hopefully I'll have enough for you. And my goal really in going forward with this, and we talked about this last spring when I presented my budget, that at some point you'd like me to come forward. Hopefully that you'll have enough information in front of you to maybe sit back and take a look at it to see if this is something you want to pursue. And I'm sure there'll probably have to be another discussion at a later point to see if you want to dig deeper in this. And hopefully tonight it's a good start. So what you have before you is a packet that I've been working on over the past several months. And I'm just going to jump right into it. Page 1, pay to participate. You're going to possibly hear me referred as pay to participate as maybe PTP. It's in looking at, the data and things that we've come across, it's something that has definitely grown over the years. It's become, I don't want to say necessarily popular, but it is something that is kind of has swept the nation, has swept New England. It's become common. But I started with here a little bit, kind of the topic, obviously, and objectives. And I'm just working off the first page. And again, just hopefully you'll find some information here to see if this is something you want to pursue. Pay to participate has been a growing trend across the United States for the last 2 decades. It's something that the information that I have here before you has come through surveys, data collection, conversations, numerous national, state, and local practices, and our financials, kind of what I do, what we do with athletics through the monies through the district that's allotted. Some findings that I came across through the research is California and Mass are given credit for really kind of starting this. Everybody's heard pay to play, but it has really gone to pay to participate. And I'll talk a little bit about that later as to why maybe possibly the philosophical change in the language with that. Ohio did a study back in 2001 to where 82% of the public high schools were surveyed. At that time, nearly 75% charged a per season fee. That was identical for each sport. 19 charged a once-a-year fee, no matter how many sports the kids played. And a few had a sibling differential, to where if they had a brother or sister participating, that can be pretty financial burden for some families. Fees were developed in many ways. Most common was to identify a particular expense within the budget and then create this type of revenue stream to offset that particular line. It was kind of very familiar back in 2010. Mr. Merrill, who I took over for, I think the terminology that was used at the time when this was talked about was SPAT at the time, and that was student participation in transportation. So, in past years, certain schools have tried to attach it to an account line for purposes. A 2004 survey showed that 34 out of 50 states in America had pay-to-play practices, pay to participate. Some schools have sponsors or advertising for their programs, which is something that some schools and districts do that to possibly avoid this type of venue. A few years back, we looked at that with the policy committee, and we looked at developing a policy for commercial advertising and corporate sponsorship. And I did a lot of research around schools here in southern Maine, and it wasn't really in the central Maine, in the northern Maine area. It was, some schools in southern Maine had it. But in really looking at it, there were only a few schools with a model that had something in place for corporate sponsorships or advertising. And really the bang for the buck wasn't really there. So at that point, we decided to kind of not really go away from it, but maybe set it aside to have something to revisit at a later time. There's been some Supreme Court decisions across the country overturning pay to participate on grounds that all students have the right to a free education. And U.S. respondents from the NIAAA, this is a National Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association. Can't believe I remembered all that. Just a little data. 60% do not charge a fee of nationally, and 40% do charge it. That is something that I think is going to change over the time, because...
Can we go back to the
Yeah.
Supreme Court decisions?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So they overturned. Came up
Yeah,
with it.
there's been a couple, not many, but, and again, basically the rationale is where it was overturned is once a public high school adopts a program, it should be made available to all students on a free and equal basis. So in some of the research and the conversations that I had with other school systems, they brought that to light. But I
It's
think...
never been supported.
I think it outweighs as far as the schools that actually have it in place versus it being overturned. Because there's a lot of data for schools that are doing this.
And I'm sure you'll get there, but we also did, I hope that you might consider something where if there were financial need, like, maybe looking at kids who are on free and reduced lunch, that we could provide opportunities for kids who, so that kids aren't prevented from.
In the data that I collected from schools, and I don't know if this is a luxury or not, but I have been through this at one school before in SAD 60. It was implemented when I was there. So there's things that you can do within the system to put in place for kids with needs,
Right.
families with needs.
Thank you.
Just a little bit of information about athletics and RSU 14, and a lot of you obviously know this because you're community members, but the involvement, the school spirit, the support, definitely athletics and co-curriculars create better students, better citizens. Moving on a little bit, we have some great participation numbers. We have a lot of kids involved in activities, athletics, and beyond the athletic arena. But just focusing on the athletic piece, we have 28 varsity programs at Wyndham High, 75 athletic teams in the district, and approximately 1,400 athletes district-wide. That can be 2 and 3 sport athletes, multiple athletes. And just a little breakdown of our numbers for athletes. We're looking at about 858 athletes at Wyndham High. We're looking at about 448 at Wyndham Middle, and 160 through conversations and data with Mr. Fitch at Jordan Small. So always when we talk as ADs, we always talk, it's just what you do with colleagues, and we always talk about participation and kids being involved. And I feel very comfortable amongst our league at the high school level in the SMAA. We have very, very good participation numbers. So that's always a bonus for sure. The athletic budget makes up about 2% of the total district budget for RSU 14, and that is very much on track with state level, other districts nationally. Usually it's right around between 2 and 3%. Yes, Marge?
That 2%, is that 2% just directly from the athletic, not the ancillary transportation, what might be from facilities?
Straight athletic. Yep.
So on top of that, there would be a component of transportation that was busing kids to away games and things.
Yeah, I don't have, we talked about this a little bit last spring, I don't budget for transportation within my budget. Mr. Kelly does that for me. But in providing the cost per athlete, I received some information from him that gives you a view of the transportation piece for the athletes.
Not here, but somewhere else in the.
Yeah. Yep. Is it? Okay. We have a unified boosters group versus an individual boosters group like many schools, which is at the last two schools I was at, Noble High and Portland High School, it was individual. And I can tell you what, the unified boosters group is a blessing. It's great. So that's a bonus. We do have two groups, I kind of call them subgroups, that branch off from our unified boosters group because the funding is self-funded for their particular programs, and that's ice hockey and volleyball. Although the district provides funding for its athletic teams, there's still fundraising going on. I know you get those knocks on your door to buy the Dunkin' Donuts cards, and which could be for athletics, and I know that different clubs raise funds and then different activities, and so I know that the community is hit pretty hard with open hands to help the high school with athletics and everything in general. The athletic program provides opportunities for the youth year-round, through vacations, holidays, everything, for sure. Schools that do not, just now we're kind of getting into the meat and potatoes a little bit, but schools that do not have a participation fee, and the little asterisk next to each school just denotes that they're a member in the SMAA, which we're a league member school, and that's the Southwestern Maine Activities Association. But you can look through here, kind of through my contacts that I have statewide. Some schools were great about providing information. Some I never heard back from. So it's pretty much, of course, with your day-to-day lives, you experience that as well, I'm sure. But you can see the schools that do not have something in place. The next page is schools that have a participation fee in place. And the information that I received back from them is articulated here. And it's information that I can, if there's a certain school that you see, I can dig deeper into that to provide, anything that you feel that you would want to look at. But there's some schools that obviously have this in place, and just for the public, I'll just go down and list them. It's Hamden Academy, Trape Academy, Scarborough, Massabesic, Gray, Falmouth, Brewer, Noble, Cape, and Old Orchard Beach. Just because they're not listed here doesn't mean that somebody might not have something in place. It's just as far as people getting back to me to provide me information to complete the report. And you can see that it was referenced earlier about, having mechanisms in place for free and reduced or siblings and capping it. You can look at Scarborough to where they went into the high school, middle school, and then they broke it off between athletics and activities. And I have a pretty detailed report from them that goes a little bit further. The next page that I'd like to bring your attention to This is just what I refer to as hidden costs because with athletics or with activities or whatever your kids, my kids, whatever our kids are doing, there's always hidden costs, whether it's, Dad, I need $10 because we're stopping at McDonald's, or you name it. It's there. These are just some things that, in polling and getting data from the coaches, these are things that our kids currently buy, the families buy, to participate. And if you go sport by sport, there's some things here to where, and this is just per family for one kid. It could very easily, there's some big families in this district that this could be a nice chunk of change that they put out every season. If you kind of go to page 2 of this, the hidden costs, at the bottom, let's just talk about golf, for example. It's very rare that I think that $740 per family will happen every year. I think if you're a golfer, you're probably not going to get a new set of clubs every year. If you do, you definitely probably have an anger management problem. But that doesn't mean that the athletes, if they're interested in it, that they're probably going to get their first set of clubs when they join the team. They're probably, as they get better, they're going to find a model of a club that they like, and now it's not uncommon for a new driver, people to get new drivers every year that are $200 and $300. They get clubs regripped. So, yeah, the $500 every year for new clubs might be a little off, but there's things that they do every year with their set. It's kind of almost like ice hockey. Ice skates are anywhere between $300 and $900. You're probably not going to get a new pair of ice skates every year, but if the child is growing and hits a huge growth spurt, you definitely could. Size matters as far as the weight that's on the blade, and wear and tear. So there's some things here that, just like that I wanted to point out. But these are really fairly, or I wouldn't put it here, are accurate numbers that reflect kind of what the families deal with for their kids to participate. And it just goes sport by sport. Just at the bottom, I'm just working off the last hidden cost sheet, and I talked a little bit about this, but, there's some things that aren't really added into this, your meal money, your fuel, your rides, obviously, commuting from Raymond to Wyndham or vice versa, Wyndham to Raymond. Photography, it's an expense, the keepsakes that the kids want. Usually 9 times out of 10, they always want to get the coaches a gift or hopefully the AD. No, I'm just kidding. But that's an expense, and that falls on the parents, and also, I hate to say it, but it's true. There's a potential and there's a risk for injury with athletics, and there could be some medical costs associated with this.
Rich, do you have a page on that, or are you just reading that? Because I don't have that page.
It's just down at the bottom, the
Very last page of that.
the closing piece.
You're missing.
We're
I'm
missing,
missing
we don't
that.
have
They
it.
don't have that
Oh,
page.
We don't have
geez.
it.
That's all. That's why I'm confused. I don't have that particular page. That's what
And
I'm
I didn't
saying.
have it either. That's
And
why
the
I
two
didn't know
of
what
us
you were
looked at each
talking
other.
about. What are you talking about? I don't have that. Ah, that's okay.
That's okay. No, that's
We don't have that.
that's. Sorry, Rich. I just, I see. Okay, now I see what you're saying. Okay. Okay.
We thought you
myself
we
here
said,
a
boy,
little
he's really got this memorized. We don't know where he got it from.
Thank you.
No. So unfortunately, the medical costs could be a piece to this as well. The next piece of data that you'll find, you'll have to turn your binder a little bit to the side, is data that is really, and not to talk lingo, but the numbers are the numbers. And these are numbers for what it really costs to operate our athletics it gives you,
This is per student.
yep, per cost per student. And fall 2013, winter 12-13, and spring 2013. And it's broken up by the contests, the stipend that are within the program, the officials, the game travel. There is some practice travel. There's some programs that golf, we have the luxury of, I feel, playing at one of the nicer courses in southern Maine at Point Sebago. It's a little bit of a drive up there for the kids to get up there, but we do it. Supplies, and sometimes with athletics and it, you know, we're not one of those schools that has a lot of fluff. We have what I feel are the essentials, but the essentials keep the kids safe, and the essentials have the ability to provide the athletic experience for the kids. And is it just game balls? No. It's a little bit more than the game balls. But, but it's, those are the supply lines and what we do. There's a repair cost, a repair line as well, because equipment does need to be updated and taken care of. There's some fees, and then I totaled it. And then you take your number of athletes, and that's how you come up with your cost per athlete. And this is something that, again, it's, you know, it takes a while to compile, but it gives you a true flavor of what it costs per pupil to participate in interscholastic athletics. I will.
The unfunded sports on here too?
Yeah, that's great timing. If you go to the winter, well, excuse me, let me back up to the fall of 2013. I put volleyball at the bottom. It's in bold. And again, you'll see the number of contests, the stipend, and everything. They, meaning the parents and the group, they've done a really good job to avoid an activity fee for the kids, to where the parents group, they really do a lot of fundraising, to where the kids really don't have to pay $100, $150, $200 to participate. So that gives
So somehow they're raising $8,400.
yeah.
I think it's probably mostly the parents, though. I went to
Putting
a
it
million
in.
different dinners
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
work. And
They're a very, they're good.
Dedicated.
They're dedicated, they're good, they work hard, and they're creative. And they think outside the box. Kind of hand in hand with that, their partner, totally different sport, but they're partners in the sense that ice hockey's not funded too. And if you go to the winter 12-13, you'll see what it costs per pupil. I do want to bring your attention to the stipend piece. That's not in bold because they're approaching about year 6 or 7. I'd have to, and I can let you know for sure, but to where they've been a varsity or been a team sanctioned through the district. And over the past few years, I've worked with them to free up some money within my budget to help pay for their stipends. So I have picked up their stipends, or the district, I shouldn't say I, the district has, and which has helped relieve some of the pressure for them. But other than that, the contest, the officials, the game travel, the supplies, everything falls on that group. And they still have an activity fee that they assess their families right around $600 to participate. And ice hockey's very, very expensive. Going to the spring, there's no teams in bold, and you'll see the costs per athlete for the spring activities. Just going to the last page, and this is just information again that I've obtained and conversations, but I just wanted to kind of list some pros, list some cons, and then just some things to consider if there are next steps if we want to look at this. But pros for P2P, it avoids programming from being cut from district offerings. There's no doubt about it, but this has obviously worked and helped save some programs in other districts. It provides another source of revenue for districts. This one here, it's funny because, we all talk about the favorite, 2 words, playing time, but this can be a pro too, is less athletes sometimes try out, thus longer playing time for athletes who decide to play. It's a reality if a family can't afford to play, and even if you have a mechanism in place, the pride factor might get in the way. If those kids don't come out and play, it's going to open up the door for other kids to where maybe playing time, is a little bit more accessible. Allows athletics to continue in a very supportive communities, which we have here in this district. Cons for pay to participate. It's believed that participation will, and/or I should say could drop. What is done with athletes that quit the refund process. I think that this is something that you'd have to definitely spell out if, not to pick on you, Kate, but I like you, but if Kate decides, to hang it up at a certain point, I think you best have something in place if you have a refund process, because that has come up as a sticking point for some schools with this instrument.
Who didn't have something in place?
Could we?
Did they not have something in place?
Yeah, a couple schools didn't, yeah. Extracurricular in athletics has pay to participate has traditionally been geared towards athletics. If you go back to some of the earlier pages when I talked about Scarborough, they're one of the only schools that really athletics and activities, but a lot of the other schools were straight athletics. So that's something to consider here. There's a lot of programs in the school besides athletics that are available for kids that are really cost-free. They don't really cost something for the kids. And staying cost-neutral is a good thing. And so I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm not saying I disagree with it, but it's something that I think if this was to be pursued, there should be conversations about that, because it could be, why them, why us, and a lot of finger pointing. One of the biggest piece, I skipped one, but I'll go back to it, but the accounting, the collection, the reminding, Kate, where's your money, and the possible removal from teams will become challenging, has been challenging, and it can be very uncomfortable too, to remove a kid because of that. But it has happened, and I'm sure that it can always be dealt with, but I think those conversations up front to know what you're going to do. The expectation that all students will have equal playing time will be on the horizon, possibly. And, once this gets started, with economic times, there's feeling that there will always be an upwards creep in fees over the time, placing a financial strain on families. So it's just, it's the sign of the times. It's, gas prices, milk, everything goes up and up and up. I think we'd be, if we did pursue this, we'd have to face it that over time, I'm sure that fee would change. Things to consider: if pay to participate is instituted in the district, these are things that gets back to one of the initial early questions, but things that we would have to have in place are waivers and/or scholarships. Free and reduced lunch, I think, should be taken into consideration. Siblings, family cap. The accounting piece is a biggie. Your refunds is a biggie. The deadline of when monies are due, I think it would be, if I was to, Kate was, even though she was our starting goalie and of our state championship team, and she was trying out for soccer, and I'm the coach, and I cut her, and she already prepaid, and then I say, well, you're not really good enough to make the team, here's your $50 back. I think you have to strategically pick your dates to avoid, not that we're avoiding confrontation, but avoiding difficult situations. So
Well, that would
there's,
just be another accounting nightmare, too.
it could, yeah, it could be. And pay to participate for athletics only, which I talked a little bit about earlier, is that there's a couple different models. There's how Scarborough does it, and by all means, it doesn't mean what they do is what we have to do or what they do is right, but they have tapped into activities and athletics as well. So that is something that is to consider with this proposal. But this is some preliminary data, about 10 pages of information that I wanted to bring to you. So hopefully it brought some things to light. I know many of you, I see you at events, and I know that you have a very good grasp of what we do and what we try to do for kids, but this kind of gives you a little inside look at really how it operates currently, but also hopefully the information that you get can prepare you for if you want me to keep going with this and look at it deeper.
Rich, thank you so much for,
Oh,
this
no
is
problem.
really very helpful, and, I think we would be remiss if we didn't say thank you for all that you do to support athletes in our
It's-
district, and I know people, the board included, are very proud of our athletes and our teams, and it does bring a positive school culture or contribute to a positive school culture, the whole athletics and other extracurricular activities that we have, like a wonderful music and drama program. And so by no means would my intention anyway, if we were to consider this, be for kids to deter people from participating. But I just want to say thank you for all you
You're
do,
welcome.
because I would look at more as like, how do we preserve all the things that we are offering? Okay, we may have to consider this as an option.
I think it's wise to have those conversations. Sorry, I'm getting a text.
Did anybody win a game?
Wrestling's going on tonight.
Last
so.
time it was Kate's big all-star game that we were live on television announcing. So,
But I think it's a sign of the times. I think you have to look at anything and everything as far as it's going to be a tough year financially, not only for athletics but for everything, and we're all in it together. And we'll get through it. But I think this is something that you wanted me to bring forward, and I think it's good information to have, and hopefully it's helped.
very helpful. I'm assuming people have questions, so we'll
Yeah.
just, if you don't mind staying
No,
a little
no,
bit
I'm-
longer. Pete, would you like to start?
Thank you. Rich, yeah, thank you very much for putting this together. The question that I had is, with these schools that have implemented it, do you have any idea, like, how long this has been implemented, or, like, which of the schools may have had this implemented for the longest period of time?
Yeah, probably the one that I would pick on would be SAD 60, which would be Noble, because I was there when it was implemented, and it's still going on. I would say at least 11 years, 12 years it's been in place. It's something that started out, I can remember, at $25, and you can see now that it's 90, and I heard today that it's actually 100. And I can't remember the cap mechanism, 270's the cap, but it's something that it's still there. I don't think it's I don't think it's going to go away.
Yeah, the reason why I asked the question is just in thinking about this, I'm just wondering how difficult it might be to gather information in terms of what this has done in terms of participation rates.
Mm-hmm.
Because you made the mention, that was the first thing I thought of when I heard this, just conceptually, I think it's inevitable that participation rates are going to go down, and just knowing whether that has indeed happened and to what extent would be beneficial information to have.
You got it. I can do that.
Marge, you had your hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I went off in la la land about you. Dawn, and I think you'd have this off, we've discussed it before. In last year's budget, when we took the whole athletic piece, including transportation, I think we had a discussion, it was kind of like, total like $500,000 of our budget.
I don't have it.
Approximate.
Frankly, I don't have it off the top of my mind, but if he's representing 2%, that's 700,000 plus transportation.
Okay.
But I can get the number for you. Yeah.
Somebody else. Eric, did you have your hand up?
No, I was just going to see what $100 per child would bring into the picture. It doesn't seem like it's a huge amount. If you follow the Nobleboro, model, what does that bring in? Because it's not unreasonable. I mean, I'm going to pay. My son wants to do lacrosse next year, and that's going to run me about $300. Anyways, for so $100 doesn't sound unreasonable. But what does it bring in to the coffers, so to speak? And then note on you put no pay to participate for Cheverus and Macaulay, and I have friends that have kids there. They pay, trust me. They pay.
Tuition.
They pay in different ways, yeah.
Tuition.
Yeah, and Thornton Academy too.
But that one for Noble was per season. It
Right.
wasn't so.
One
Oh,
thing-
no, I'm told everybody, you're right. Okay, so you would bring that up.
And one thing, too, that's a great point, because, for months, I'm playing with numbers, and you just do it, because we're numbers people, and you pull out your calculator, and you do it. But one thing that I kept going back to was, what would this look like? Our waivers and our free and reduced lunch and our siblings and the cap. So I could kind of, but I could definitely put together a little model and some information to kind of give you some rough numbers with some things in mind.
If you don't mind. One thing I learned actually recently was that there's data, and I can't cite the data, but it was given to us by Justin Alfon. I was at a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and our free and reduced is about 38% in this district. And
Which has gone up.
Yes, it's gone up. And the most recent information, and they've collected data, and what they've said is even whatever the participation rate is in the districts, it's about 70% of what could be, which means that our district really is probably more realistically in the 50% range of free and reduced, should the parents not have the pride, or however you may want to articulate that. It's just, I think, an interesting point, to me anyway.
Just to kind of dovetail with that, you're right, this has been discussed many times, and back in the day, one of the major concerns was participation, particularly with those who were the free and reduced, and if it's 50%, that's a huge chunk of kids. There was a lot of discussion about scholarships and waivers, and despite all of that, I think the fact that we're at 38%, but it's probably 50, speaks to the issue that people who are in that situation find it very difficult to ask for help, and find it very difficult to say, I need a waiver or whatever. So that's of concern to me, because I know firsthand, seeing some friends of my kids who did not participate in athletics and other activities. They make a huge difference in feeling invested in your school, and I would hate to
Alienate.
I would hate to put a stumbling block in. Not that I'm opposed to it. I mean, I'm still, the thing that, between that concern about students who probably more than anybody need to play, And then when I look at the fees that you had put together, and thank you for doing that, my gosh, I'm so glad I'm not involved in hockey.
I told my son it was evil.
It's just,
One of my kids
it's
never played hockey.
astounding. I think your suggestion of putting together a scenario, I mean, if you have 1,400 students, and that's multiple, whatever, at $50, did I do this right? Is that $70,000? You're a math person. Is 1,400 times 50?
Let's do it, right? We'll calculate it. We
I
don't
put
have
my-
to worry about it.
I was to say, put my phone away.
That is $50. That is 70,000.
That's what I meant, 70, that's what I had. So, I mean, there's a perfect example. You've got $70,000, and I think for me, I think it's a great revenue, but I don't want to do it at the expense of our students. So I think it's a fine balance between the two.
Oh, you kind of started your question, you didn't finish, right?
You wanna
She's
say
on her
something?
second.
She's on her second. Okay, then
That's
let me
fine.
let Jennifer go. Okay, were you done, Kate?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, Jennifer.
Yeah, so I agree, and I'm not a fan of pay to participate, given the fees we already have. But the premise that this extra $50 is going to eliminate those people from sports who need it the most, I don't think is valid, because I think all these other fees are going to eliminate them first.
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to be able to afford a $100 pair of sneakers for basketball.
Yeah.
You know, if you're getting
You're probably right.
free lunch. But, you know, that being said, I'm not for this for many different reasons. You know, I just think that, you know, especially the fact that equal playing time is going to start coming into it then. If people feel like, all right, I paid to be here, I should get to play, you know, then you're going to start, I think having winning teams, I think does a lot for the morale in the district too. And I think,
Community.
yeah, that you want it to
High
be
school
a strong place where people want to be on those teams because they win. And I think if you start treating it more like an elementary school sport again, you're not going to do as well against some of these other schools who can be very competitive.
I don't understand your correlation about treating it like an elementary school.
Well, because in elementary school, everyone gets to play, no matter how good you are, right?
But I think that's why it's called pay to participate, not pay to play. The idea
But that's
is
one of his points, that it could result in,
Yeah.
expectations, but
Right.
not necessarily changes.
And if
Have
you're not
to-
getting,
that would have to be
Mm.
made clear to families that, you know, doesn't mean playing, it means participating, you're on the team.
Anybody that plays in elementary pays, though. Any sports that we're
That's right.
playing all the way up
Pays
through.
dearly, a lot
You're-
more than
Oh,
$100.
Can I,
There are no free, I mean, there are no team sports in elementary. It's all rec.
oh, right. But I paid more for my 2 high school sports than I ever paid for any elementary school sport.
You mean in your associated cost?
Yeah.
Marge?
you know, I was gonna keep the list, and I didn't, from last year when we originally started the conversation. But as different seasons have come and gone, your coaches have given clinics and for, I can't even remember, lacrosse, there was basketball, there was quite a few of them, and they were not cheap, and they were very short periods of time. So my thinking is, if they can afford to do that, not to coaches, if families are paying for their kids to go here, soccer is very expensive. I don't mean your soccer. I mean the soccer program, Little League, everybody is, and I'm not saying that we should do it because everybody else is, but those teams are full. So to
Jerry.
say people can't afford it,
Yeah.
if you want them to play, they play.
They just go down to the fields.
Yeah, I know they do it in the fields. Gary?
I want to agree with Jennifer. I think that these are pretty hefty costs, and I don't think the $50 is going to make the difference. That doesn't mean I agree or disagree with pay to participate. I'm not sure where I am with that. But these are, I mean, I'd rather see us work towards getting scholarships for people to be able to play because they can't afford these things than the idea that we're going to not have people, because that's, I agree with Kate that people who participate, you know, tend to do better in school. They tend to be more engaged. You know, I would rather have pay to play and use scholarships to get more people involved. There's also a huge difference in the cost of these different sports. So I would almost be willing to think about what do we do about the more expensive ones versus the less expensive ones and what those costs are. So I don't know if there's many roads to get to this place, and I don't know how we go about doing that, but when you have $800 per person and $129 per person, there's a big difference in your athletic program, and they're all great sports. I don't know how we kind of differentiate between those, but if you're going to have to buy all that equipment, again, you get golf clubs once every 4 years or 3 years, but some of these things you get every year. I don't think it lets people out. I think it's too bad kids can't participate because they can't afford these other costs. So let's do pay to participate and use that as a scholarship for people who'd like to and can't necessarily afford to get these things. I'm not suggesting, but that would be a better use of that, and it's a way of thinking about doing it. So, and I don't think what we'd get out of this would be worth the work it's going to be. If it's $70,000
Administratively?
and then take out whatever it is for free and reduced in scholarship, I just not sure, logistically, that it's going to yield the kind of revenue that, I'd have to see some really good revenue projections that are pretty solid.
We may have to look at higher
fees.
Right.
Especially when you look at, the cost per pupil of some of these sports. I mean, it's high. And, I think my interest in this is, when you're a taxpayer looking at an education system, and I do believe that extracurriculars are very important and a part of what education should be all about. And when we are in a place where we're slashing and burning, where does the rubber meet the road? It's in the classroom with the teachers and that component of education. And so there is a little bit of a hierarchy, if you will, when you come to budgeting and cutting or finding ways to make it work. And from a perspective of people who don't have kids in the school system, they want to see that performance equals kids being educated and becoming citizens who can go out and do things in the world, and that's the math and the science and the English and the in a lot of people's minds. And so I think we have to keep looking at ways where we can say to the public, look, we're doing what we can, and right now 40% of our kids are participating, 60% aren't. So whereas 100% are taking math. So I'm going to support the math budget because 100% of our students are taking advantage of that. The 40% who are doing sports, then their parents should be helping with that cost. That's kind of where I'm coming from. I would love to hear from Kate if she would like to share any feelings about it, because this is obviously it's a new concept that you understand the idea, right?
Yeah, I have friends in other schools that pay to participate in sports, and I agree with.
Just move the mic a little closer. Yeah. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I agree with what she said about different sports costs different amounts. I play soccer and I play tennis. And tennis, you need one thing, and that's a racket. And then soccer, you need a bunch of different stuff. So there's a huge range in prices that you need to pay for. So I would want to see how it would be able to distinguish between each sport, because some sports, the cost to pay $100 per sport could be the cost it would be to play at all. If you didn't have to pay the fee, so it could double the amount. And also, would it be just the athletics that pay this price? Because I know that can cause a lot of issues between athletics and drama and art and music, and all these things would kind of clash about it. Be why are we paying and you not?
Right.
Because we're both participating in school function events.
Right.
So that's just kind of where I
think
from.
that's and I think if we want to consider this, that we should consider an activity and sports fee, because those are all things that are outside of the regular curriculum that kids are participating in. So. And we wouldn't, we wouldn't want to cause that kind of friction amongst
Yeah.
you. Thank
That's
you.
good insight.
Yeah, that is good insight. Any, do you pick up anything about
I'm going
people
to jump
who?
over the table in a minute.
I'm sorry, Kate. Do you pick up anything as far as, you said you have friends who are in schools that do pay to participate, and does that, any sense of what that is like, or?
Well, the friends that I have that do it, they've been going there for 4 years, and they've been doing it for 4 years, so it's kind of just like something that happens. They don't really think anything of it, but like as if we were to like, if we implemented it like next year, then the kids who have already been here and haven't had to do it, it might cause like a little issue. Yeah, they might be, why do we have to do it this year and we didn't have to do it last year? It's like a lot of back and forth type stuff that happens in high schools.
It doesn't change when you're an adult. Miss Kate,
Thank you.
before you jump over the table.
I felt like I was Mike. Remember when he'd always do this, and he'd do this, and he'd do this, and he'd do this? I've become Mike. It's scary.
Oh, no, don't say that.
And microwave.
It's not a good thing. No, I'm kidding. 2 points that I wanted to speak to, and one is the extracurricular. And just to clarify, just because 40% are in athletics does not mean necessarily that the 60 are not involved in anything else. So
Talking athletics, right?
I would be interested in, and I don't even know if you can extrapolate this information, what percentage of students are not involved in extracurricular activities? Because I really think the public and the students and the parents value extracurricular. And if you ever want public participation, start talking about sports, because this room will fill up faster than anything you've ever seen. The other point, and I hope I don't forget what it is, that was one of them that, and there was another one that I really wanted to get out, and I should have written it down. Go on.
Sure.
Just in general, I think, and this was a huge discussion, even before 2010, about the drama and the theater and the expense involved in that. And I would agree with you that that would be a big bone of contention. Oh, I know what it was. When you had come to us, when you had come before us, just keep talking, it comes out. Before us about the policy and about advertising in the schools. And we spent a great deal of time about generating money with that. And one of the biggest reasons that we decided not to pursue it was the management of it. It was a huge reason. I mean, we had talked about one of the staff members, because there was no way he was going to be able to do it. And even in this, I think that is of concern.
Somebody would have to be hired.
Somebody would have to be hired to manage this, because, I mean, you're tracking down people for a bazillion different reasons for money. So that would be an additional expense that would offset, say, the $70,000. For the advertising piece, it was a whole different issue, but the management piece sounded just bleh, not worth the effort. And I'm reserving judgments for this, but I think we ought to consider, he's not going to do it, and Marlene's not going to do it. It's going to be somebody else who's going to be doing it. I mean, if we want to do it right. So that's just kind of a minus sign to the other stuff.
And we don't want to have the Bud Light Eagles either.
No. No, we don't.
Diana.
Actually, Rich, that's what I was going to ask you. So you worked under this system, you said?
Yeah, I've
Who
been
did
said.
take care of the accounting and all the paperwork that comes with this?
It fell strictly on the coaches and athletics, and it wasn't good. We had great people and a ton of integrity and a ton of pride, but we didn't have good things in place. And I'll give you an example of, a kid has a deadline to get the fee in, and could be cash, and it could be that cash goes to the coach on the fly. Here you go, coach. Yeah, I got you. Goes in the pocket, just first reaction, and then no matter what amount the money is, it's you need a place to hold it. It goes there, and then it's not good. And I was always looking for and asking for that bigger force as far as the counting purpose to administer and oversee it, because it just wasn't good at our level.
And it might be an employee that's already employed that it could be, because certain times of year would be busy and then other times not.
Potentially.
So
Like
you
a
might
stipend.
have a stipend or whatever.
Yeah.
It may not be that you have to hire
For the start of
that's
each season.
dedicated
Yeah.
to
Right, no.
And it happens. I mean, when you talk that, you're a Class A school, you're a big school, you have that big volume of kids coming and going, and, a team of 70 kids, I mean,
It's a lot of transactions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that could be just one team. So,
Jerry.
I think the question about other sorts of activities that go on is useful. One is what we haven't talked about, like your gate receipts. So you do have a revenue from that, and so kind of subtracting that. And I'd be interested, Don, I don't know if you have this information about, for example, the drama program and Wyndham Chamber Singers, what their costs are, and then what they bring in that helps to offset their costs, just as Rich has some things that come in. And then what's the cost per person? Because I think we don't really have a sense of that. What is the real cost of our drama program? Because there is income that goes with the expense, just as there is.
But just remember that the income from the gate does not go to his budget.
It doesn't, but
it
it should.
does.
But it should
but
offset.
yeah.
I know it
I know
doesn't
what you're
go
saying.
back to him.
Yeah.
But it
Does the
it
income
should.
from the concerts go directly to those programs?
Well, they have so many different, well, I'm thinking more drama, but when you need the copywriting issues, and it's not copywriting, what is it called?
Yeah.
Yeah, it
You know
is,
what I'm
yeah.
talking Those issues where you have to pay people for the privilege to use whatever that, that's.
Play a song or
So
whatever.
I know there's money raised. Actually, Deb McAfee, some years ago, gave us some financial information. I'm sorry, I'm not able.
No, I don't mean to put you on the
No.
spot right now,
Right.
but I think it is one of those.
are things that
Yeah.
would be helpful to know.
Right. Yeah. And I'm not even sure what other extracurriculars really, what the costs are. So it's sort of a list of what are
All the
they
things.
and
Yeah.
what the costs
Well,
are.
I think some of them wouldn't have, you've got like the Key Club, which I doubt
Well,
if
it's easy
they
to
have
give
any
you the
cost.
differential cost.
Right.
but
Yeah.
It's different to then try to figure out what the supply cost might be, what the school might support in those.
Yeah, but even just the direct differentials, and if there was any income for those, would at least be some way of beginning to look at some of those things. But it's, I mean, you've done a great
Kind of in the
job.
way that you've done
Yeah.
each sport.
Yeah, you've done a great job.
It would
It's
be
so
nice to
helpful.
have the different activities kind of delineated in the same way.
Right.
Obviously, they wouldn't have all the same categories, but they have an advisor who gets a stipend, and, they maybe take trips that cost money, and maybe we don't fund those, so, it'd be nice to know.
Yep, that'd be great.
Question in my mind, and I don't know if this is way out left field or not, you guys can tell me, but is there possible when you're doing the budget vote that there's a sample question that says, what's your thoughts, and you're getting some public information? Can it go to referendum, the voters can decide? How does that work?
I don't think,
Regrettably not. Not that, that's not a good idea, but there's 11 cost centers that people vote up or down, basically, and that's really all, it's legally prescribed.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you couldn't poll people.
We
like-
have an exit
you
poll.
could do, or what you could do a Survey Monkey.
Right.
Through the listserv.
'Cause I'm just thinking, because if you have a majority of your population that says yes or no, it makes it real easy to pass. When you hear that, and you say, well, there you go, people have spoken, but.
Survey Monkey would be
I mean, that
interesting.
goes back
Listserv's only
to,
gonna
but
go
that
to
goes back
parents.
to, right, the listserv only goes to the parents, so that's one issue. And also, often when people go to the polls, they're not well educated on all of
Right.
a topic.
Right, it's a lot
And
to it.
they hear something and make a choice, or they don't hear something and guess which, way to vote. And so I think that's where we, who get all the information, gather information,
And make all the money?
that, I go back to what our role is. Our role is to make that choice based on all the information we gather.
Yep.
But I don't think it's a bad idea to get people's opinions. Certainly we want.
No, I mean, the Survey Monkey, even if it is only to parents are the ones who are going to pay. So sending it to them would be interesting to see what they would have to say.
I would think that their first reaction would be no, because there is
They don't
no,
wanna
there is
pay.
no, you know what I mean? Because there is no other. It's not like saying, would you rather lose a sport or
Yeah,
pay?
no, you're right.
Then you'd get an honest answer. But if you just say, do you want to pay? Who is going to volunteer to pay for anything?
Let me think about
If
that.
there's no
Funny,
alternative.
Or do you want Kate Bricks to pay?
There you go.
But it would also be helpful, Rich, to have an idea of what you think could possibly, looking at your kind of population, what might be a revenue from this. I mean, if it's, $5,000, then clearly not, but $150,000 would make me sit up and, kind of wonder. So I really don't have any idea.
Or even
what-
70 is a position.
Right,
Right.
yeah, exactly. That's
Well,
right.
and we've talked, Rich, too, about expenses that maybe in the future might, become more of an issue. Things like concussion management, trainers, so it may be that some of this is funding more of, things that we need more of and we can't yet fund. So I think that if we could take it that step further into a model, but I think before you do that, I think we need to get some information about the other activities, because I do think that we should, if the board agrees, look at that whole piece, not just the athletic piece.
There's just one more piece that might be a little bit helpful. If we could do, and I don't know, go back 4 or 5 years, what has been the difference in cost of athletics? Because I know it's been an increase, and can we afford to keep paying that? Even if
You mean in total, just generally?
in total with athletics or activities.
Well, athletics.
Just what's been
It's mainly
budgeted this year,
athletics.
this year, this
Yeah,
year.
that's easy.
Yeah.
I think they should pay more if they lose it, like in soccer.
Soccer gets a bye this season.
Kate, you're staying back.
Pay
I
for
think-
performance.
I think, when you talk about the survey, and everybody kind of knows this, but I'm just going to articulate it again, which is that 80% of your population doesn't have an association with the school.
Yes.
So that's always the difficult thing, even in these sessions, when the most interested people are, of course, the people that have kids. And
Right.
so it's hard to get the opinion of those that
Right.
don't, that's all.
But they're participating, even though they're not a kid, they're participating financially.
Absolutely.
Right, exactly. All right. Anybody else have, Pete? Don't forget the mic, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up a couple of things that we should probably think about as we as we consider this. We've talked tonight about the families that involve their children in rec programs, and the comments made that, well, if they can afford to put the kids in the rec program, they shouldn't have a problem contributing. And granted, the rec programs are full to some extent. Some of them are, but I can also safely say that there's a lot of families out there that don't have their children participate because of the cost. And high school athletics are the only opportunity for their children to participate because there is no cost, no direct. No direct cost. Obviously, there's the indirect. So I think we need to consider that. We've also talked about the families that can afford the rec programs and the families that cannot, and what we could possibly do for them, basing it on reduced lunch or free or reduced lunch, that population. But we also have to acknowledge that there's for lack of a better term, marginal families that don't qualify for free or reduced lunch, but at the same time don't have the disposable income to be able to pay that additional expense, especially if they have multiple children.
Right.
So this gets back to my original point. My original question to Rich is, what impact is this going to have on participation rates? Because studies show that participation in high school athletics and extracurricular activities help to keep kids in school. And how is this going to impact our goal as a board to keep graduation rates up where they need to be? And you can take it even a step further. If you've got kids that aren't participating because of a cost, those are children who may be exceptional athletes, which you're going to have the effect of maybe not putting as competitive a team on the field or on the court. Plus, also, some kids get into college by athletic scholarships. And if they're not able to participate at the high school level because of financial restrictions, maybe that's an opportunity lost. So there's a lot to consider.
Definitely.
I'm not sure, Rich, if you can get any, I mean, it's probably hearsay more than numbers of, but maybe Noble has some data on did numbers increase, decrease, not change. You know, if you can garner any of that, that might, you know, I mean, that's really the only way we would have, it could be different if we applied it in this district. We can't really say, but that's at least a starting
Right.
point.
Intuitively, you would think that participation would have to go down.
I can get that.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions, thoughts?
Thanks, Rich. Great,
Yeah,
great
Rich,
job.
thank you very
You're
much.
Thank you, Rich. Great
You're
job.
welcome. Rich.
We'll continue the conversation.
Yep.
But this has definitely been really worthwhile, and I know you put a lot of effort into this, so.
Thank you.
It's just the beginning, I guess, right?
It's all right. It's all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Do we have a 5-minute break?
Yes, we are going to break for 5 minutes so that people can do what they need to do. I don't know if Brad is back there, so we may be still on air.
So be careful what you say.
Yes. We're going to 5-minute break. Okay, there we go. Now you can say whatever you want to say.
definitely busy.
Good evening and welcome back to our RSU 14 Board of Directors meeting, January 8th, and the time is 8:25. And we just finished our workshop and presentation by Rich Drummond. So we're moving on to number 9. We had a presentation
In November.
weeks ago from Principal Howell from the Wyndham High School, where he presented us with a few subjects that, or not subjects, courses that were going to be added to the program of studies. And that was, you know, to give us a sense of what he was proposing. And now this is just officially, we need to make a motion to approve that course of studies. So the course of studies includes all of the things that are offered. And there were 2 new courses that were added, both in science, I believe? Social studies, sorry. History of music, through music, and another,
Leadership.
yeah, was also in the history department.
I don't know where you want me to ask a question, but I have a question.
Should we make the motion and then?
Okay.
Yep, then we can discuss it.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so,
I move to approve the Wyndham High School Program of Studies for 2014 to 2015.
Second.
okay, any comment from the public? Any comment from the board? And Kate, this is where you get your chance.
Okay. I couldn't find the video, and maybe there wasn't one, to watch the program of studies. I went online, and I don't think it's posted yet for this meeting. And as we all know, the minutes don't get into the real, it just says we talked about it. My question is, when he talked about the program of studies, had I been here, I would have asked him about the community service requirement of 20 in the overall, with his new initiative with the capstone. And I called him today to get a little more information about the capstone and the 20 hours of community service. And I'm just not clear whether the freshman, sophomore requirement was a result of a board discussion, that we decided that we wanted to maintain the 20 hours
20 hours.
of community service.
Is that in the program of studies?
It will be, because I spoke to him. It will be a
We didn't
requirement for
discuss
graduate.
that at all. We didn't, I don't recall discussing the he did a report on the capstone.
Okay.
But basically the report was to say that they're really doing a lot of research right now. And the capstone is kind of coming in coordination, or he would like the capstone concept to come in coordination with the standards-based learning initiatives. And so I think he is not as far along in that process as he a year ago, or how many ever months ago when he first brought up and was very jazzed about the capstone project idea. He's not as far along because he feels now that it's important to, meld these two or make it part
No,
of
I
a
know.
bigger.
I spoke to him today about it.
So we didn't discuss to change anything in relation to what's current.
Yeah, the community
So the
service.
capstone
Community service.
is not going to happen next year?
That's right.
Okay,
That's right.
okay.
And-
So the
and there was
40
nothing
hours
Not
will-
ready, so it's all status quo
Status quo.
until
Right.
the capstone concept gets developed.
Okay, because I had asked him if there was a write-up of what was going to be included in the handbook, and it hadn't been written yet. He said we may have to push it out a year, but I was not under the clear understanding that it was going to be pushed out.
That's the understanding that I had.
Yeah, and I think it's likely most districts will probably put a waiver in with the proficiency diploma to buy some time. And I think Chris really, once we know exactly what a proficiency diploma is required by the state, then I think he'll really get to your question and to the capstone and how to meld the 40 hours.
So the bottom line is this capstone's not going to be next year.
I don't
right.
think
That's
so.
all I need to know.
Yeah.
The only thing that
That's
we
why I was
discussed
confused.
were these two courses of changing the program of study. Nothing else was changing, not community service or the
Right.
capstone.
Okay,
So,
that's where I was confused, because
Okay.
he gave the
Yeah.
presentation, and I thought that was going to be part
Well,
of
a
that.
while
Yeah,
ago,
I'm
the
sorry that you
capstone.
didn't get to see his presentation, because it would have been
I know,
clear
and I
if you'd
tried to
seen
look
it.
at the video,
Yeah.
and there was none.
The only thing
Um,
he presented were the two courses, and that's all he's presenting, so the
As far
rest
as
was not a part of
changes.
it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So, did we get information on these courses?
We did at the time, and did we not have descriptions sent out? I mean, he went through thoroughly.
Yeah, it was in
Yep.
one of our packets.
Yeah, that night it
And
was.
so- You got it, Jennifer?
Yeah, it was emailed to me before the meeting.
Yeah, came before the
Um,
meeting, yeah.
So, yes, Mark.
I don't.
I wasn't there, naturally, for the meeting. Was there any additional cost to these two additional programs? So it's a wash?
It's teachers
Financially?
who are already
Okay.
existing that proposed it, and basically, what he said was, obviously, everything in the curriculum guide is based on who signs up and registers.
Okay.
So not all the courses every year will run. It's based on, enrollment, but these were two courses that teachers were very passionate about, and so the general consensus amongst the board was that it would be worthwhile adding these to the slate of options for kids.
Because they're electives, these are not.
No, I
yeah, These are
understand.
elective courses.
Okay.
All right, everybody
I'm
clear?
good.
Anyone else have any questions?
I'm not familiar with them, so I don't know if I was absent that particular time or not, so I may abstain just.
You can abstain if you
You,
want.
I think you probably were December 4th.
I don't think you can.
Is that when Kate was here?
You can't abstain?
Why? I wasn't here. I'm going to,
So I think, it says this one you weren't here, and it's when
Yeah, you
he did the
abstain
program
from
of
the
study,
vote
so
as
you
long
weren't
as
here.
have a majority.
Yeah. But you would have gotten it in your
Yeah,
packet.
I'm sure it's fine, I
Yeah,
just,
yeah, but you would have gotten it in your packet, because it came in our packets.
Right.
okay, my
right.
apologies.
Yeah.
Everybody good?
Yes.
Okay.
We're good.
All those in favor of approving the Wyndham High School Program of Studies? Okay. You got it, Sandy? And opposed, anyone? And abstentions? 2 abstentions. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you. Our next segment of the evening is a report of the secretary, so we've got some minutes to approve, which are attached to the agenda for tonight, if you didn't get to see these. So anytime anybody wants to make a motion.
I move to approve the minutes of the November 6, 2013 special meeting.
second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? 2 abstentions. Okay, next.
I move to approve the minutes of the November 20th, 2013 meeting.
Second?
Great. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstain? 1 abstention?
I move to approve the minutes of the December 4th, 2013 regular meeting.
Second.
Great. All those in favor? Opposed? And abstentions? 2 abstentions. Got all that, Sandy?
Yep.
Sorry,
Okay.
can we go back to November 20th? It states I wasn't there, but I made a motion.
That's good.
You might have arrived, did you arrive late?
I probably did.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're good.
I think you arrived late,
Okay.
Probably.
I just wanted to make note.
or left early, so it might have, your attendance might not
I
have.
think I arrived late.
I think
Yeah.
you probably got late.
So that's probably what happened. Okay.
And I don't want to be really specific, but I think you voted for this and you weren't at the meeting, so you can't vote.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I
Right.
just, in terms of abstentions, I just want to be really clear that
So Pete should be abstaining. He wasn't even
Well-
on the board.
he wasn't on the
You-
board, so I don't even know why, I don't know. That doesn't matter,
Yeah.
but
Is it required that you
I'm going
don't-
to clarify
Yes,
this
could you-
Okay.
before the next meeting
Okay.
Yeah, it
about
would be good to know for
minutes.
newbies.
Okay.
reviewed them all.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean, if
we-
you've
Yes, we
reviewed
will.
them,
Yes, we will.
if you, I would like to know, parliamentarians,
Yes.
if you've reviewed the minutes, can you?
You have to be
How could
present
you review it
to.
if you weren't
You have
there?
to be
That's what we're gonna
present.
find, that's what I'm gonna find out, or if
Okay.
you saw, I think so too, or you have to
We are a
have,
board that is always learning,
or you have to
Constantly.
abstain, you have to have viewed the video.
so
It-
we'll
I don't think
find
it's the
that out.
minutes
And have
because
an
it's not.
affidavit.
No.
An affidavit signed by 5
The
people.
good news is,
Good
nothing will change the outcome tonight. All of the minutes are approved.
That's right.
Okay? Wonderful. Moving along, we did all those. Do we have one more?
Turn the page.
18.
The 18th.
It's on the same page for me.
We just did the 4th, that's why she pointed out.
Okay.
I move to approve the minutes of the December 18th, 2013 meeting.
Second.
It's a race. All those in favor?
That says it was a regular meeting? Is that okay?
Wait.
But on the meeting, the minutes itself.
I don't think it matters if it's called a regular meeting or a special meeting on the notes.
Good
A
catch.
good catch.
Okay, all those in favor, I'm sorry. Okay, and opposed, abstained, abstentions, okay. All righty, we made it through the report of the secretary. Okay. The last part of our evening before we go into, another executive session we should be going into. I don't know why we don't have a motion for that. So we will need a motion, for 13 to go into executive session. But before we do that, we actually held off our, elections for chair and vice chair, this year intentionally, so that we would have a full board and that we would get through our, board retreat in December, and so that's why it's normally we would do this a little earlier in the year. So now is the time for us to elect leadership, and can nominate, nominations, are accepted now until November 2014, so.
I nominate Katrina Sangster for chair.
Are there other nominations? Anyone?
All eyes are on you. No.
Okay.
I move to close nominations.
Okay. Boy, that was fast.
Brian.
All right, thank you.
Second.
So nominations are now closed.
I seconded that, Sandy.
Okay, you got that, Sandy? All those in favor of Katrina Sangster for chair until November 24th?
Teamwork, isn't it?
Yay. Okay, I'll vote for myself, so it's unanimous. Thank you all for your vote of confidence. I appreciate that. Either that or you're like, sucker. Yeah, right.
Partly.
What do the kids
Partly.
do?
I don't know. If we do it, we'll do it wrong, so don't try.
I know.
Okay,
It'll be
election
wrong.
Of the school board vice chair.
I nom-
Nominations are now in order.
I nominate Eric Colby.
Great.
Can I give an explanation?
I-
Can I say more?
I have no idea what the protocol is on that.
Not,
Why not?
not till they
Do
second.
it
not
until
till
somebody
they-
says you can't.
Not till, not
she'll
till,
jump over
you
the
can't
counter.
till it's
Till all the
seconded. Until
okay.
it's seconded, then you can.
Oh, okay.
So do we have a second?
Okay,
Do we have a second?
Yeah.
Okay.
So then, if we have a second,
Okay.
we can comment, no?
I think Marge has done a marvelous job, and if we didn't have 3 new members here, I think it would be a different story. But I am nominating Eric because I think a pair of fresh eyes in a leadership role could assist the board in general in looking at things that maybe we might forget, being a new board member. And he seems like he has a pretty big mouth, so I think he'd do a good job.
All right.
That's a
take another
qualification.
nomination now?
I guess I'm in.
I actually would nominate Marge Gavoni. And, okay, that's it. Thank you. And the reason, just to give a little bit of a reason, one of the things that, oops, actually, I don't need to give a reason. There we go.
No.
Anyway, anyone else, any other nominations? Did you want to?
Yes, I do. I want to nominate Diana Freisman for vice chair.
Okay.
Second?
Any other nominations? Okay, so now we have 3 nominations. Somebody has to close the nominations.
So that's who seconded that? I missed who
I think I did.
Kate did.
Thank you.
Okay, I make a motion to close nominations.
Okay, if there are 2 more
Second.
nominations. Okay. Do I have to take a vote on closing the
Yes,
nominations?
because there has to be 2/3 vote
Okay.
to close.
So all those in favor of closing nominations now? Okay, that's unanimous.
Yep.
Okay, nominations are now closed. So we have
Yep.
3.
And you only get to vote once. Just so
Okay,
all
so
the
I'm
new
going to give
board members
everybody a
know.
moment to think about it.
Is there any discussion before we vote?
We can have, would think we can have discussion right now. Yes? No?
I don't know, I'd have to read up on the election piece of it.
I don't know.
I don't,
I don't know.
Well, we could probably hear from each of the nominees as to,
If they want to be,
Well-
why they want to.
sounds good.
Well, that's my question. My question is, are any of the nominees, do any of the
Willing or not?
nominees not want
There
to
we
do
go.
it?
That's a good question.
Or just, do you guys just want to make a statement? So let's do it in the order that people were nominated, because that seems like it makes sense. So Eric, any feelings on your nomination?
Well, I thank Kate for the,
You're sucking up too.
I think, obviously, I'm new and don't have the knowledge and insight that you guys have, so I'm not sure I could honestly say I'd be the best candidate for it, so I'll say that honestly, but I'm willing to serve in any way that I can on the board. I'm here to work, and I'll leave it at that.
Great. You're next.
Oh, well, I enjoyed being vice chair, and if people would prefer somebody else, I would definitely go along with it. I'm not opposed to being it, but I'm not opposed to somebody else being there also.
Okay, great. Diana?
It's a little unexpected.
Come on.
I don't think at this time, really. would like to do that. So,
You're saying you would rather not be?
I would rather not. I just didn't know if you were done. That was the only thing. But now
I
you're
think
saying
she's
you would
saying
like to
she's willing,
continue.
she's willing to continue.
Okay. Since we don't discuss it
Or willing to,
beforehand.
or willing to have others,
But
take
I'd
on.
be more than willing to have somebody else do it.
But you would prefer not to, from a
At this
time
time.
perspective, or?
At this time.
And we don't talk like at basketball games to discuss these things
No, we don't,
beforehand,
I know,
so-
like that movie we saw.
Like that movie we saw, so.
All right, so is that helpful to people?
Can I just ask what the role of the vice chair is?
The chair and the vice chair meet regularly with Sandy and, review the agenda, and if there are things that the board ask to, maybe for us to look into, we'll determine if that's the wish of the board and where it might fit in the agenda. So it requires more time. It's another meeting. And then, of course, if the chair is not present, the vice chair presides at meetings. So some of it is just formality, but some of it is definitely more, hands-on work. Okie dokie? Thank you. All right, so, so I will go through the list in order again of the nominations. So those in favor, and you can only vote once. All those in favor of Eric Colby for vice chair until November 2014? Well, hey, woo! All right.
He can vote for
Do we
himself, though,
have to
correct?
say? He
Of
can.
course he can.
He can. Yeah.
And I would have if more hands went up, so I didn't. I'm not fool.
So I guess we have to vote those opposed. Do we have to do that? Yeah. Those opposed. Okay.
Yes, you
Those
have to.
opposed.
Oh.
Oh.
Hey!
Change my mind now.
All those in favor. Okay. So that.
And you might ask for abstentions.
Any abstentions? I think we had no hands up or down. So now we're going to move on to those in favor of Marge Gavoni for vice chair until November 2014. Okay. And all those opposed? You've got to vote.
Oh,
Or no,
do I have to vote? Okay.
Well, yeah.
No, well, she doesn't.
Well, you can abstain. Okay, so, boy, it's decided.
Congratulations.
No, I do have to say, I do appreciate your vote of confidence in me and in us, and I have learned a lot. I feel it's a privilege to have this opportunity to, be a leader in this role, even though sometimes it's not always fun. I really do enjoy the opportunity, and I appreciate you giving me that opportunity because I have learned a lot through the process. So I hope someday you all want to have this opportunity too.
Because it's healthy to have change.
It is healthy.
Since it's a high bar, I don't know.
It is very healthy, and I will say, it's also really healthy to have some continuity. It was really helpful for me to be the vice chair with Mike. I hate to say it, but darn, he trained me. And so, from a perspective like, oh my gosh, what do it's kind of overwhelming.
Well, typically, that's the way it kind of rolls.
Yeah.
Is the vice chair then moves into the chair if they're willing.
Right.
Sometimes people aren't willing, so
Right.
that's fine.
So anyway,
Ain't
thank
happening.
you. Thank you
Ain't
all.
happening.
Thank you all. Yeah, you
That's
say
what I
it now,
thought.
dear.
That's why I made the nomination.
There you go. Don't worry. Don't worry. We got a year to work on it. Okay, somebody needs to please.
Can I ask a question? It's really a question, Sandy, your superintendent notes say on this, all cost center managers will be providing their proposed budgets. Was that a mistake on this letter you sent out?
They'll provide a what?
Well, it says all cost center managers will be providing their proposed budgets.
Superintendent's notes.
Yeah, the superintendent's notes. I guess a little confused by that, because it wasn't on the agenda.
No.
Okay.
I think it needed to have another sentence, that all cost center managers will be providing their proposed budgets to Dawn and
Okay,
myself.
okay,
We'll
okay.
begin to crunch the numbers.
Okay.
This is a snow day, central office is
Okay,
closed.
no, that's okay, just it was embedded there, and I
Over
thought,
our
oh,
cell phones, my
We
secretary-
saw your explanation.
that's fine. No, I just, it was embedded there, it was a little confusing,
This
so I didn't
happens
think
right
that you
before
were
the-
there
I'll take
yet.
that responsibility.
That's fine. I knew it wasn't happening, but I wanted to just clarify that that's where it's at. It's not to us by any means yet. Okay.
So, what I,
So we
what we would like to do now, so each year, we are required by law, but we also think it's a good idea to evaluate our superintendent. The superintendent is our only employee as the board of directors. He is the person that we supervise in the district, or she. And so we do an evaluation each year, and I think it's fine for the public to know the way we approach that is really also Sandy doing a self-evaluation and sharing with us his learnings and goals and accomplishments and whatnot. So that's what we're here to do tonight, but that's something that happens in executive session. So I just need somebody to create a motion.
I
And
move,
we remember we will not be coming back to our meetings. so
Okay.
we need to-
I move to approve going into executive session to discuss the superintendent's evaluation, and we will not be returning after our executive session.
You have to say this. Do you have to, I don't know. if
No,
you-
that's a different one, that's
But do you have to say pursuant to?
pursuant
That's it, that's the
to
executive.
1 MRSA subsection 405-6D.
Right, which is the executive session.
Wonderful. All right, all those in favor of going into executive session? Excellent. Nobody's opposed, it's unanimous.